Builder of food empires. From startup to millions. Approaching $1 billion in client success. Acclaimed food mastermind. International consulting powerhouse. Tim Forrest.
Thank you for joining us here on TimForrest.com. My guest this week is Mark Mandel, a sales leader in the natural food industry. We were talking earlier in the week, and I thought it'd be a great resource for you and to share here on TimForrest.com. For more than 20 years, Mark has pioneered distribution and growth for some of today's best-known natural brands, including Kashi, Terra Chips, and the Hain Celestial Group. He's also co-founder of Earnest Eats, a superfood oatmeal brand he introduced to stores such as Whole Foods, Sprouts, Kroger, Publix, Costco, Walmart, and Target. Mark's success in creating awareness for many better-for-you brands reflects his passion for health, wellness, and a clean food supply. And you might have seen Mark on Food Fortunes on the Food Network, Shark Tank-style presentation. Thanks so much for being here, Mark. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your expertise.
Thank you for having me on as a guest, Tim. I appreciate it. And I have to say, I've also really enjoyed reading a lot of your posts. I think you dive into a lot of issues that entrepreneurs and people in the food industry are very interested in. And I've enjoyed some of your podcasts, such as with Mike Irwin as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. How did you get started in the natural foods market?
Well, it was fortuitous, Tim. I was actually working in nonprofit administration for an environmental group here in San Diego that was raising awareness of the convergence of toxic chemicals in our communities and in our homes. And one of the projects I was working on was a fundraiser to raise awareness of the toxic contaminants that are in San Diego Bay. It was a 10K race. We got about 1,200 participants in that first year that we put on the race. But I was seeking out some local partners and local sponsors for the event. And I was fortunate to come across a small startup cereal brand by the name of Kashi company, headquartered right here in La Jolla, California. And the original founders, a husband and wife team that lived in La Jolla, were kind enough to provide a lot of product for the 1,200 participants in that event.
My first thought is I'm just imagining, just thinking back to all the success and the growth. I've actually written about some of the achievements of Kashi. So can you help us understand, how did you grow it? What did you do to gain so much success in the market? Why were you so successful?
Well, I've had a number of opportunities to learn and grow my career through the natural products industry, as you've indicated in the introduction. Kashi was my first opportunity. They invited me in, initially asked me to head up their promotions and consumer marketing program at that time. At that time, nobody was calling it an ambassador program, but I essentially helped build a national ambassador program for Kashi Company. And it's a critical learning for startup brands to understand that you really do have to invest in consumer awareness for the product. You have to build trial, and that's an important way to really prove the concept of your brand. So I was fortunate to spearhead that effort with Kashi Company and really grow their footprint and consumer awareness nationally. And then I moved into the sales arena, and I helped really grow their footprint in the conventional grocery arena as well.
How important do you think the National Ambassador Program was to the purchase price and the selling of Kashi later down the road when they sold the business?
Certainly. Well, an ambassador program is simply an outgrowth of demoing and sampling your product, and I think it's critically important for early stage brands to understand that, getting the product into mouths is really important to build trial and to build consumer awareness and word of mouth for your product, because that's the kind of thing that's going to stand out, and that becomes the story to tell them to retailers who you want to approach and sell your product to. Clearly, having a strong audience and being a forerunner in the industry for doing this kind of sampling was critical to raising the consciousness of the Kashi brand throughout the U.S., and I think played a strong part in helping them grow their retail footprint as well.
Do you think also all the work that you did direct with consumers that played into your sales presentations and working with retailers and gaining additional new stores, did it make it easier for you? Were the buyers aware of your product through their consumers already? How did that play out with a sales presentation?
I do think that a number of retailers became aware of the product through their aggressive sampling and word of mouth program. I won't say that made it any easier to sell to retailer. Retailers still have their requirements to gain access to their store shelves, because I think we all know that bricks and mortar retail is largely a real estate game. And so there are costs of doing business there, and then of course the cost of continuing to build awareness, once you're on the product shelves as well. But I do think it was critical for building a story, and I want to share with your listeners that, to me, selling to retailers is really an emotional connection. That to tell a brand story, you really have to have that emotional connection to an audience and be able to share that emotional connection. It's really about storytelling more than it is specific data points. I think data points can help sell the story, but ultimately it's an emotional connection that people must have to the brand for it to succeed.
How does that play out? How do you share that emotional connection you're mentioning with a retailer when you're talking about real estate? How does that translate? What is your job in building the presentation, and how do you incorporate that into your presentation?
It's really a part of everything you do in building it into your presentation and sharing the story with retailers. It starts with understanding how consumers are resonating with the product, and then sharing those touch points with the retailer in your presentation, even to the point where throughout my career, we've always tried to build a dedicated page in that presentation on consumer responses and consumer feedback to the brand. And it certainly doesn't hurt either when some of those touch points and some of the feedback and comments that you get are with notable people within the industry or with significant celebrities as well.
Well, does data analysis, are there insights that you get from consumer reports or analysis? What is it besides that you're sharing? What do you share about your consumers? When you're sitting in a meeting, you're talking to a buyer, here's the product. What information or what part of your presentation allows you to share that consumer piece with them? How do you show that?
Sure. Well, I think there's a variety of ways to do it. Certainly, you want to understand who the target consumer is for your brand, and that's really the early stage opportunity that new startup brands have, is really learn who your consumer audience is for that product and be able to share it. So, for example, is your product particularly resonating with a specific consumer community, such as gluten-free or allergen-free? Or, is it a paleo focus? And really be able to share how that then adds value to the retailer set and differentiates from what they already have on the product. I think also you can use different data points. Most early stage brands don't have the finances necessary to invest in some of the critical data that's available in the industry. Some of it's called Spectra, which is more consumer insights. And then on the retail side, there's different reports such as Nielsen, IRI, and SPINS reports as well. That really helps you understand what the market is in retail for your products and what's really selling and what's not.
Yeah, it's just so important to share that. So many food makers, they think they don't have a responsibility or they don't have the ability to purchase the data, so therefore they skip it. What are some of the ways or hacks that you've worked with in the past to try to get access to that information, have it in your presentation, even though you maybe didn't purchase it from a syndicate or a consolidated information data source?
Sure. Well, if you don't have access specifically to those data points, it becomes difficult to use the hard data, but I think you can extrapolate a lot of it. And this is why I want to encourage a lot of entrepreneurs to really build a mentor community for their brand and for themselves. It helps in many ways to avoid the pitfalls that so many other brands have gone through. And there are so many successful brands out there in the marketplace now and leaders of those brands that can help share the insights that they gained, as well as all the missteps that they made through that process. So, for example, one area that you can really help beg, borrow, and steal from is the broker community. So early stage brands are in many cases likely to partner with a sales agency. We know them as brokers in the industry. And many brokers do subscribe to data, but don't have the ability to directly share that hard data points with the brand itself, but they can extrapolate that information to help the brand sell a story even more strongly to retailers.
Great. Just talking about some of these data points and some of these technical issues in working with retailers, what, regarding invoicing, how important, I want to talk about deductions and invoicing and service. How important is accurate invoicing, complete and timely, accurate order fulfillment for retailers? And then I'll jump into deductions after that. But I'd just like to get your take on actually filling orders and accurately fulfilling those orders for retailers on time. How important is that?
Well, I think it starts with a clear understanding of the various operational functions within a business. So there has to be really strong communications between sales, operations, marketing, and finance to begin with. And most smaller operators are doing a lot of that, all of those functions themselves, but it's really critical to do the groundwork so that as you're growing a brand, for example, you're doing the basics such as sales forecasting so that you understand what your supply chain needs are going to be so that you're able to supply your customers as you roll out your brand into the marketplace. So it's really, really important to have that cross-functional communication, and I think it's really critical for your customers to feel confidence that you have that ability as well. Many retailers today are actually invoicing or billing brands who are unable to fulfill a minimum level of their supply chain. So, for example, if you fall under a 95% fill rate to a specific customer, they may actually invoice you a penalty for not being able to provide their stores because their customers rely on them to have product on the shelf as well. So it works both ways. There has to be a trust and there has to be communication within an organization and externally with your partners as well.
We hear a lot about deductions. Do you have any key points on ways to mitigate deductions?
I don't know if there's any way to absolutely and completely mitigate them. Certainly the objective is to try to reduce them to a manageable level. I think a lot of it comes down to the go-to-market strategy. Are you going to be using third-party distributors? Are you going to be selling direct to retail? In some cases, early-stage brands don't really have that option, so they're really forced into a situation. And I think it's become very, very challenging for a lot of early-stage brands who don't understand that consolidation in our industry has made the issue of deductions much more challenging for them to succeed. So, for example, on the distributor side of the business, we're primarily on the natural foods side, dealing with a couple of very large national distributors, such as UNFI or Kashi. Their strategy has actually flipped over the last 10, 12 years, where they used to be profitable by selling foods and goods to their customers. The level of competition has become so strong today that the model has flipped to where they're now signing contracts with their key retailers to sell them goods at a very low markup or margin level. So, for example, many of their retailers may be at a cost plus 7, cost plus 8% markup. Well, no business can succeed with a 7 or 8% margin. So now those distributors are looking for opportunities to build back the actual brands that they represent to make up the difference in margin there. So really understanding the nature of how these distributors work is a starting point. Secondly, understanding how they promote and what you need to do to be successful with your promotional efforts. It's really critical to constantly be getting your product in front of new users. And so you do have to promote, whether it be through temporary price reductions or what we call TPRs on the shelf. Those are price reductions on the shelf, or whether it be in-store demos or some other actions such as the event demos that we were doing at Kashi. All of these are really critical. How you execute them and how you manage them is really important to mitigating deductions.
Wow. What do you share with people about growing their business and adding new customers? You've sold to so many, and you've added thousands upon thousands of points of distribution for different clients and food makers. What advice do you have for them for adding accounts? Do they just go out and make great sales calls and pick up business? Or is there some other process or strategy? What do you suggest to people?
Yeah, that's a really great question and a very challenging and difficult question for a lot of startups as well, Tim. So, we hear the word strategy a lot. In this particular case, what I would suggest is a go-to-market strategy is understanding what your financial means are, what the costs of going to business are going to be, and what it takes to support that distribution. So for an early stage brand, are you smart going directly to a Target or a Walmart, or are you better taking a small geography, say, for example, a San Francisco or a Bay Area, and really building a success story there, making sure that there is proof of concept, meaning that consumers like the product, that it's resonating, and there's a lot of repurchase, because repurchase, or what we call velocity, is the most critical aspect in terms of being able to grow your business. And I can tell you that the investment community, the VCs that are putting a lot of money, millions of dollars into startup brands today in our industry, are looking more and more in terms of those retail turns or velocity. So it is really critical to have a focused strategy, whether it be geographic, whether it be channel driven. So are you going to sell to, for example, a Whole Foods and a Sprouts or independent natural food stores first, and then build success there and then try to grow into conventional retailers? Or are you going to start by targeting one or two regions of Costco and try to really invest in those demos that they do in Costco to create that consumer awareness?
This has been great, and I've really enjoyed learning from you, from your experience and insights. Do you have any other points or best practices you would like to share?
Yeah, no, I think certainly I want to reiterate something I alluded to earlier, which is the mentorship aspect of the business. Tim, we're seeing unprecedented levels of new entrepreneurs getting into the business today, and I do believe there will be a shakeout. I think there's some great new brands out there, and I commend those that are learning the ins and outs of the business early on, but do develop a mentor network so that you're learning insights and you're avoiding the pitfalls that so many before you have suffered in order to grow your brand. That will help drive your success in the long term. Learn those strategies, actually implement them, put them into your playbook, and then go out and execute them, and you can have success for your brand.
Yeah, I can't echo that enough. My experience, a lot of people will look at the things that I've accomplished as far as different success, helping clients raise money, driving new business, opening new accounts, developing new products that have been so successful. But it goes back to my beginnings in the industry. I began loading trucks, and then I was loading food trucks. And then I was fortunate to work with the two largest food companies in the world, Nestle and then Unilever. And so much of what I've learned, and I've been able to bring forward into my clients that I work with. So it's just so important that mentorship and those ideas. And I almost, so oftentimes when I'm working with a client, I like to call them almost hacks, in that I'm bringing a method or a paradigm that I learned at Nestle or Unilever or, a large multinational brand, and bringing that to the entrepreneur. And we're using that paradigm, the concept, but we're doing it in such a way that's affordable, and we can actually, it's reasonable and something we can actually do in a market. And that's really what they're doing. They're just doing a lot of markets at the same time. And so That's how I advise my clients. And I agree with you that it's just so important for people to reach out for mentors and think about gaining that. Talking about that, how would people get in touch with you if they have more questions for you? How would they reach out to you? Where can they read more about you and learn more about your expertise?
Sure. And just one last add-on thought to what you just said, Tim, as well. We work in an industry that is really about relationships, and I think people are really about that human connection, much more so than a lot of other industries in the natural foods and natural products industry. And so people are very generous of their time, generally speaking. I've been able to connect with hundreds, if not thousands of people in the industry. I certainly cannot claim my success for myself. It has been the culmination of so many people adding value to what I do. And I think this industry really reflects that spirit of generosity. So do take advantage of that. Now, to just give insights as to how people can reach me, I'm certainly on Facebook, Mark Mandel, and I'm in San Diego. My email address is Mark Mandel, that's MarkMandel 1959 @gmail. And then lastly, my phone and text is 858-775-8302.
Thank you so much, Mark. I think we've shared a lot of value.
Yeah, again, I appreciate you having me on as a guest, Tim. It's been fun.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Building Food Empire Show with Tim, the Builder Forrest. Be sure to access other episodes knowing that just one good idea, an offhand remark, a quip, a story of seemingly unrelated success could be worth millions if applied. Be sure to subscribe.